The Crystal Lake Country Club sparkled under the afternoon sun, its manicured grounds stretching toward the pristine golf course. I'd arrived early for my parents' 30th anniversary celebration, wearing a simple navy dress that Mom would inevitably criticize. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Magnolia Room, I could see staff arranging white roses on each table, the same flowers from my parents' wedding 3 decades ago. Sarah. Mom's voice cut through the pleasant atmosphere before I even reached the main entrance. She stood near the valet station, already dressed in her champagne-colored designer gown, diamonds glittering at her throat. "You're early. And wearing that." "Hello, Mom. Happy anniversary." I smiled genuinely, hoping today might be different. "The dress is new. I thought it was elegant." "Elegant?" She looked me up and down with the expression I'd seen countless times growing up. Disappointment mixed with confusion, as if wondering how she'd produced such an inadequate daughter. "It's department store. You do realize we have a reputation to maintain here?" Dad appeared behind her, adjusting his Rolex. Kenneth Morrison, real estate developer, country club regular, and perpetually embarrassed by my existence. "Is there a problem, Patricia?" Sarah arrived early. In that dress. He barely glanced at me. "The party doesn't start for 2 hours. Why are you here?" "I wanted to help if you needed anything," I offered. "It's a special milestone." "Help?" Mom laughed, the sound brittle and sharp. "Sweetheart, we have staff for that. Professional staff who know what they're doing. You should go home and change into something appropriate. Maybe that burgundy dress we bought you for Christmas? At least that had a proper label." "This dress is fine, Mom. It's respectful, Anne." "It's Target or Macy's or whatever middle-class store you frequent," she interrupted. "My friends will be here. The Hendersons, the Blackwells, Senator Morrison and his wife. Do you understand the caliber of people attending today?" I took a slow breath, maintaining my composure. "I understand perfectly." "Do you?" Dad stepped closer, lowering his voice as a couple walked past toward the tennis courts. "Because frankly, Sarah, your mother and I have been discussing whether you should even attend today. You have a way of diminishing things." The words stung, but I kept my expression neutral. 28 years of this had taught me to build thick walls. "I'm your daughter. Of course I should be at your anniversary." "Biologically, yes," Mom said, examining her manicured nails. "But socially? You're an accountant at some tiny firm. You drive a 5-year-old sedan. You live in that sad little apartment in the wrong part of town. How do we explain you to people who matter?" "You could explain that I worked hard, graduated summa cum laude, and built my career without asking you for anything," I suggested quietly. Dad's face reddened. "Without asking for anything? Is that what you tell yourself? We paid for your state school education, didn't we? Though God knows we offered to fund somewhere prestigious if you'd had the ambition to get in." "I got into prestigious schools. You said they were too expensive unless I studied business to join your company. When I chose accounting instead, you withdrew the offer. See, Patricia? This attitude." He turned to my mother. "Always throwing the past in our faces. Always playing the victim." Mom nodded sympathetically, touching his arm. "We've given her everything, Kenneth. And this is how she repays us, bringing up old grievances at our anniversary celebration." I hadn't planned to bring anything up. They'd asked why I hadn't asked them for anything. But explaining logic to people determined to misunderstand you was like trying to bail out the ocean with a teaspoon. "I'm sorry," I said simply because it was easier. "I'll just go find my seat inside." "About that." Mom exchanged a glance with Dad. "We've rearranged the seating. Your brother and his wife are at the main table with us, of course. Dylan's just been promoted to senior vice president at Kenneth's company. We're so proud. And Rebecca is pregnant with our first grandchild." "That's wonderful," I said and meant it. Dylan and I weren't close, but I held no ill will toward him. "Congratulations. You'll be at table 7, Mom continued. "In the back corner. With some of the auxiliary guests. The Henderson's son who just got out of rehab, the Blackwell's daughter who's going through her 3rd divorce, people like that. We thought you'd be more comfortable with your kind of people." "My kind of people. The disappointments. The embarrassments. The ones families hid in corners and hoped nobody asked about. Table 7. Got it." I walked past them toward the entrance, refusing to let them see any reaction. The Magnolia Room was stunning, I had to admit. Crystal chandeliers, white and gold decor, a string quartet setting up in the corner. The country club had been my parents' second home for as long as I could remember. Growing up, they'd brought Dylan here constantly. Tennis lessons, golf clinics, junior member events. I'd been brought along occasionally, usually left with whatever staff member drew the short straw while Mom and Dad networked. I found table 7 easily. It was indeed in the back corner, partially hidden behind a decorative column. The table number cards were elegant cream cardstock with gold lettering, just like all the others. But the positioning told the real story. Sarah. Dylan's voice boomed across the room. My older brother strode over, looking every inch the successful executive in his tailored suit. Rebecca walked beside him, her hand resting on her barely visible baby bump. You made it. Love the dress. Thanks, Dylan. Congratulations on the promotion. And the baby. Thanks, sis. He seemed genuinely pleased, which made me wonder if Mom and Dad had told him about table 7. It's been a wild year. Dad's finally trusting me with the major commercial deals. And Rebecca's pregnancy has been smooth so far, knock on wood. Rebecca smiled warmly. We're excited. Terrified but excited. You'll be wonderful parents, I assured them. Will you excuse us? Dylan asked. I need to introduce Rebecca to some potential clients. Dad's orders. They drifted away and I settled into a chair at table 7, pulling out my phone. I had emails to answer, always did. My small accounting firm, which my parents loved to diminish, had been growing steadily. We'd recently taken on 3 new clients, including a manufacturing company with complex books that would require significant attention. Is this seat taken? I looked up to find a young man about my age with tired eyes and an expensive suit that hung slightly too loose on his frame. The Henderson's son, I assumed. Please sit, I said. I'm Sarah Morrison. Jake Henderson. He sat down heavily. Let me guess, you're at the kids' table too? The disappointments table, apparently. He laughed without humor. Yeah, that sounds about right. My parents think banishing me to the corner will somehow encourage me to get my life together. As if shame ever fixed addiction. I'm sorry you're dealing with that. Are you? Or are you just being polite? He studied me curiously. You seem different from the usual country club crowd. Is that a compliment or an insult? Definitely a compliment. Jake leaned back in his chair. Most people here would rather die than admit they don't belong. But you seem comfortable with it. I considered that. I've had a lot of practice being on the outside. Over the next hour, table 7 filled up with the rest of the misfit guests. Jake had been right. We were the collection of family embarrassments, gathered together so we wouldn't contaminate the successful people. There was Jennifer Blackwell, currently navigating her 3rd divorce and speaking to anyone who'd listen about her ex-husband's inadequacies. Marcus Chin, whose parents had paid for 4 different graduate programs that he'd never finished. And 2 elderly cousins whose connection to my family I'd never quite understood, who seemed confused about why they were in the back corner. The party began with champagne service. Servers circulated with trays of crystal flutes, though they seemed to skip our table more often than not. When one finally approached, Mom appeared at her elbow. Oh, I don't think table 7 needs the Dom Perignon, Mom told the server sweetly. Perhaps the house champagne. That should be sufficient. The server looked uncomfortable but nodded, retreating with her tray of premium champagne. Patricia, one of the elderly cousins, protested. That's hardly. Now, Aunt Linda, let's not make a fuss. Mom's smile was steel. It's quality champagne regardless. Some people simply can't appreciate the difference. She glided away, leaving our table in awkward silence. Did that really just happen? Marcus asked. Welcome to the Morrison family, I said quietly, taking a sip of the house champagne when it arrived. It was fine, perfectly drinkable. But Mom's point had been made crystal clear. Dad took the microphone as the appetizers were served. Seared scallops for the main tables, basic salad for table 7. He launched into a speech about 30 years of marriage, partnership, and building a life together. He thanked specific guests by name, pointing them out in the crowd. He mentioned Dylan's promotion and upcoming fatherhood. He talked about their wonderful friends, their blessed life, their perfect family. He never once mentioned me. Wow. Jake muttered beside me. That's cold. I maintained my neutral expression, cutting my salad into precise pieces. It's fine. It's really not. But I'd learned long ago that showing hurt only gave them more ammunition. So I smiled politely and ate my salad and pretended my heart wasn't cracking just a little more. The main course arrived. Filet mignon for the important tables, chicken breast for ours. The string quartet played classical pieces I recognized from my childhood, when I'd actually thought I might one day belong in rooms like this. The laughter and conversation from the front of the room created a constant hum of exclusion. Mom visited our table once more, leaning down to whisper in my ear with a smile on her face for appearances. "You're being very quiet over here." "Good. Just sit nicely and don't draw attention to yourself. This day isn't about you." "Happy anniversary, Mom," I said evenly. She straightened, patted my shoulder like I was an obedient dog and returned to her throne at the main table. Midway through dinner, Dad clinked his glass for attention again. "I want to take a moment to acknowledge my incredible son, Dylan." "Stand up, son." Dylan stood, looking slightly embarrassed but pleased. "Dylan has exceeded every expectation," Dad continued. "He's taken our family business to new heights. His deals this quarter alone have brought in over 40 million in new developments. I couldn't be prouder to have him as my partner and my heir." "To Dylan." Everyone raised their glasses. "To Dylan." I raised mine too, genuinely happy for my brother even as the omission cut deep. Dad had 2 children, but only one son worth mentioning at his anniversary party. "Now," Dad went on, "I know some of you have asked about our family. People wonder about success, how we've built what we have. The truth is simple. We set high standards and we don't apologize for them. We surround ourselves with excellence. We expect excellence from ourselves and from our children." His eyes flickered to me for just a second, then away. "Excellence isn't about where you go to school or what job you take," he said. "It's about ambition. Drive. The hunger to be more than ordinary. Some people have it. Some people," another brief glance toward table 7, "are content with mediocrity. And that's fine, I suppose. The world needs ordinary people too. We just don't celebrate them at events like this." The words landed like punches. Around the room, I could see people glancing at our table with pity or disdain or that particular kind of curiosity reserved for watching someone else's humiliation. Jake's hand found mine under the table, a brief squeeze of solidarity. "Breathe," he whispered. I was breathing. Steady, even breaths. In and out. The walls I'd built over 28 years were high and thick and impenetrable. "Patricia and I have been members of Crystal Lake Country Club for 22 years, Dad continued. "We've served on every major committee. We've brought in dozens of new members from the right families. We've elevated this club's reputation. And we're proud to call this place our second home." He paused, looking directly at me now. "Which is why it's so important to understand what this club represents. Excellence. Prestige. Standards. This isn't a place for everyone. It's a place for people who've earned the right to be here through achievement and status." Mom stood, joining him at the microphone. "What Kenneth is saying, though perhaps more delicately than necessary, is that some people simply don't fit in places like this. It's not an insult, it's reality. Our daughter, for example, is a lovely person with a good heart. But she's never quite understood the importance of appearances, connections, and social positioning." My hands remained steady on my water glass. I took a slow sip, letting the cold liquid ground me. "Sarah has always been content with less," Mom went on, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "A small job, a small apartment, a small life. And that's her choice. But it does make occasions like this somewhat awkward. How do you introduce your daughter to senators and CEOs when she works at a strip mall accounting office?" Scattered, uncomfortable laughter rippled through the room. Some people looked away, embarrassed by the public shaming. Others leaned forward, enjoying the spectacle. "Strip mall is a bit harsh, Patricia," Dad said with a chuckle. "But the point stands. Sarah, honey, maybe you'd be more comfortable leaving? This really isn't your scene. You could head out, avoid the discomfort. No one would blame you." All eyes turned to table 7. To me. I set down my water glass with careful precision. "I'm fine, thank you. I'll stay for dessert." "Are you sure?" Mom's voice dripped with false concern. "Because honestly, darling, you don't belong in this club. People like you serve here, not dine. That's not cruelty, it's just fact. The servers are perfectly nice people, but they're not members. And you're not really member material either, are you?" The room held its collective breath. This had crossed from subtle exclusion to overt humiliation. Even the most socially obtuse guests recognized the line being crossed. "I'm staying," I repeated calmly. Dad's face darkened. "Sarah, don't make this difficult. You're embarrassing yourself. More importantly, you're embarrassing us on our special day." "I'm sitting quietly at the table you assigned me," I pointed out. "I haven't caused any problems." "Your presence is the problem," Mom snapped, her polite veneer cracking. "Do you know how many times we've had to explain you to our friends? Make excuses for why you didn't amount to anything? It's exhausting, Sarah. For once, just once, could you make things easier by gracefully removing yourself?" I opened my mouth to respond, but movement near the entrance caught my attention. Robert Chin, the head of security for Crystal Lake Country Club, was walking briskly toward our area. Behind him were two other security personnel and a man in an expensive suit I recognized as Martin Reynolds, the club's general manager. "Oh, perfect," Dad muttered. "Security. Sarah, if you won't leave voluntarily." "Mr. and Mrs. Morrison," Robert interrupted smoothly, his face professionally neutral. "I apologize for the interruption of your celebration." "No apology necessary," Dad said. "We were just asking our daughter to leave. If you could escort her out discreetly." "Actually, sir," Robert continued, his eyes moving past my parents to me, "I need to speak with the owner." "Madam Owner, is everything okay?" The room went silent. Not the hushed silence of before, but complete, absolute silence. Even the string quartet stopped mid-note. "I'm fine, Robert, thank you," I said calmly. "Just enjoying my parents' anniversary party." Mom's face had gone white. "Owner? What are you talking about?" "The owner is Charles Whitmore owns this club. Everyone knows that." Martin Reynolds stepped forward, his expression carefully controlled. "Mrs. Morrison, perhaps we should discuss this privately." "Discuss what privately?" Dad demanded. "What is he talking about, calling Sarah owner?" I took another sip of water, letting the moment stretch. 28 years of their dismissal, their shame, their constant message that I wasn't good enough. Now here we were. "Mr. Whitmore passed away 18 months ago," Martin explained quietly. "The club was sold to a private buyer who wished to remain anonymous. All operational decisions have been routed through legal representatives until now." "What does this have to do with Sarah?" Mom's voice had climbed an octave. Martin looked at me, asking silent permission. I nodded slightly. "Ms. Sarah Morrison is the owner of Crystal Lake Country Club," he announced. "She purchased the property and business 18 months ago. She's been my employer since then, though she requested complete confidentiality during the transition period." The silence shattered into chaos. Gasps, exclamations, chairs scraping as people turned to stare. My parents stood frozen at their microphone, faces cycling through disbelief, confusion, and the first hints of dawning horror. "That's impossible," Dad said flatly. "Sarah doesn't have that kind of money. This club was sold for—" He stopped, perhaps realizing he was about to announce the price. $42 million, I supplied quietly. Plus $8 million in immediate facility improvements and $20 million in trust for long-term maintenance and upgrades. "I believe you're familiar with the property value, Dad. You tried to buy it yourself 5 years ago, but Mr. Whitmore refused to sell to developers." Dylan had gone very pale. "Sarah, you have $70 million? I have considerably more than that." I turned to Martin. "I think now is probably a good time to end the confidentiality requirement. Could you bring the files?" Martin nodded, gesturing to an assistant who'd appeared with a leather portfolio. He set it on table 7, the disappointments table, and opened it to reveal documents with the club's letterhead. "Ms. Morrison owns this property outright," Martin continued, his voice carrying across the stunned room. "She's also the primary investor in the expansion project we've been developing. The new championship golf course, the spa facility, and the additional dining venues. Total project value of $130 million. Where?" Mom's voice came out as a whisper. "Where did you get that money?" I'd wondered when they would ask that. Wondered if they'd even noticed. "Do you remember my college roommate, Yuki Tanaka?" I asked. "You met her once briefly when you came to my graduation. You didn't think much of her. Her family wasn't prominent, she wasn't from the right background." Mom's face showed no recognition. Yuki was brilliant with algorithms and coding. During our junior year, she developed a piece of software for processing financial data. It was revolutionary but needed significant refinement. She had the technical skills. I had accounting knowledge and business sense. We partnered up. I paused, taking another sip of water. We spent 3 years developing it after graduation, working from my small apartment that you loved to mock. Living cheap, investing everything back into the company. You never asked what I was doing during those years. You just assumed I was failing quietly. Sarah, Dad started. 7 years ago, we sold our software company to a major tech corporation for $800 million, I continued. My share after taxes and various investments came to roughly $370 million. The numbers landed like bombs across the Magnolia Room. Since then, I've been investing, I went on. Real estate, tech startups, sustainable energy companies. My current net worth is approximately $900 million. My financial advisors project I'll cross the billion-dollar threshold within 2 years. Mom made a sound like air being let out of a balloon. I bought the Crystal Lake Country Club because I have fond memories of being here as a child, I said. Before I understood that I was only tolerated, not welcomed. I thought I could transform it into something better, still prestigious but less cruel. More focused on community than exclusion. Robert Chin stepped forward. Madam Owner, should I address the membership situation? Please do. He pulled out his tablet. Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, I've been instructed to inform you that your membership at Crystal Lake Country Club has been terminated, effective immediately. You can't do that. Dad exploded. We've been members for 22 years. We're on committees. The club's charter gives the owner absolute authority over membership decisions, Martin said. Ms. Morrison's instructions are clear. You're no longer welcome here. On what grounds? Mom demanded. On the grounds that this is my club, I said quietly. And I don't allow bullies to remain members. I've been reviewing complaints for months. Dozens of staff members have reported your rudeness, your condescension, your tendency to treat service workers as beneath you. Multiple guest complaints about your behavior. And today, you publicly humiliated your own daughter at an event in my facility. I stood and Jake stood with me, his hand on my shoulder in support. You taught me that actions have consequences. That standards matter. You're right. This club isn't for everyone. It's not for people who measure worth by income level or social status. It's not for people who shame their own children. So you're correct. People like you don't belong in this club. Security moved closer to my parents. But this is our anniversary party. Mom's voice cracked. These are our guests. Your guests are welcome to stay and enjoy the meal and entertainment, I said. The club will honor the complete event you paid for, though I'll be refunding your money, of course. I don't want payment for hosting cruelty. But you two need to leave. Dylan, Dad turned to my brother desperately. Say something. This is insane. Dylan looked between our parents and me, his expression complicated. Is it insane, Dad? You just spent 20 minutes publicly tearing down your own daughter. On your anniversary. In front of everyone you know. He shook his head slowly. I knew you were hard on Sarah. I didn't realize how cruel you actually were. Cruel? Mom looked genuinely shocked. We were being honest. She needed to understand her place. Her place. Rebecca, my sister-in-law, spoke up. You do understand she owns this entire club? That she's worth nearly $1 billion? That while you were mocking her apartment and her car, she was building an empire. She deceived us. Dad shouted. No, I corrected. I maintained privacy about my finances. Which is my right. You never asked about my life because you weren't interested. You assumed I was failing because it fit your narrative. That's not deception. That's your own willful blindness. Robert gestured toward the exit. Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, please. Wait, Jake Henderson stood. Before they go, can I say something? I nodded. Jake looked at my parents. You put me at table 7, the rejects table, because I'm in recovery. Because my addiction embarrasses you. But Sarah didn't judge me. She didn't treat me like I was less than. In the 2 hours I've known her, she's shown me more basic human decency than you've shown your own daughter in 28 years. So honestly, getting kicked out of a club owned by someone like her? That's not a punishment for her. It's a punishment for you. Several other people at table 7 nodded. Even my elderly cousin Aunt Linda spoke up. Patricia, Kenneth, I've known you for 30 years. And I've watched you treat that girl like an inconvenience her whole life. Whatever happens next, you've earned it. My parents' faces were red now, a mixture of fury and humiliation. They'd come to this party expecting to celebrate their perfection, their success, their wonderful life. Instead, they were being escorted out by security while their daughter, their disappointing, mediocre daughter, was revealed as the owner of the club they'd used as their second home for 2 decades. This isn't over, Dad hissed as security led them toward the exit. We'll fight this. You can't just. I can, I said simply. And I did. The lawyers you're thinking of calling? 3 of them are my guests today. The judge you play golf with? He's at table 4 and he's been watching this entire scene with great interest. You taught me to play chess, Dad. I just play at a higher level than you realized. They were escorted out. The doors closed behind them. And the Magnolia Room erupted into conversation. Martin approached me carefully. Madam Owner, how would you like to proceed with the rest of the event? I looked around the room, at the guests who'd witnessed everything, at my brother and sister-in-law who looked stunned, at table 7 where my fellow rejects sat with expressions ranging from shock to admiration. Move table 7 to the center of the room, I said. Right where my parents were sitting. Bring them the Dom Perignon they were denied. Upgrade their meals to match everyone else's. And make sure the staff knows that every person in this room, regardless of which table they started at, gets treated with equal respect. Of course. Martin smiled. It will be my pleasure. As staff scrambled to rearrange the room, Dylan approached me. Sarah, I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything. No, I do. He ran a hand through his hair. I knew they were harder on you than on me. But I told myself it wasn't that bad, or that you didn't mind, or that it was just their way. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Thank you, I said simply. Can we? He hesitated. Can we start over? I should get to know each other. I'd like my kid to know their Aunt Sarah. The real one, not the version Mom and Dad invented. I'd like that too. Rebecca hugged me carefully. For what it's worth, that was the most satisfying thing I've ever witnessed. The looks on their faces when security called you, Madam Owner? Priceless. I laughed and realized it was genuine. It was pretty good timing. The party continued, though with a completely different energy. Table 7, now the center table, became the heart of the celebration. Jake told stories about his recovery that were both heartbreaking and hilarious. Marcus Chin turned out to be an incredible pianist who took over for the string quartet. Jennifer Blackwell had everyone crying with laughter about her disastrous dates. Around 9 p.m. Martin approached with an update. Madam Owner, your parents have been calling repeatedly. They're threatening legal action, demanding explanations, insisting this is all a mistake. Block their numbers from the club's systems, I said. And send them formal documentation of their membership termination along with the full refund. Include a list of the staff complaints we've received over the years. They should understand exactly why this happened. Already prepared. He handed me a tablet showing the document. It was thorough. Dozens of incidents, witness statements from staff, guest complaints. A pattern of entitled cruelty spanning 2 decades. Perfect. Send it. As midnight approached and the party wound down, Dylan found me on the terrace overlooking the golf course. What happens now? He asked. With Mom and Dad? With everything. I considered the question. I'm going to keep running my businesses. Keep investing. Maybe make this club into something better than it was. A place where people are valued for who they are, not what they're worth. And I'm going to stop hiding who I am to make other people comfortable. No more small apartment and old car? Oh, I'll keep those. I smiled. I like my apartment. My car runs fine. But I won't apologize for them anymore. And I won't pretend to be less than I am just because it makes insecure people feel better. Dylan was quiet for a moment. Dad's going to lose his mind when this gets out. The social implications, the business connections through the club. He should have thought of that before he publicly humiliated his daughter in front of 200 people. I looked at my brother. I didn't do this for revenge, Dylan. I bought this club because I genuinely wanted to improve it. I kept my ownership quiet because I wanted to observe how things really ran without people performing for the owner. And I would have let mom and dad keep their membership if they'd shown even basic human decency today. But they didn't. No. They showed exactly who they are. So I showed exactly who I am. The next morning my phone exploded with messages. Some from my parents' friends, demanding explanations or offering awkward apologies. Some from business contacts who'd suddenly discovered I existed. Several from reporters who'd somehow gotten wind of the story. But the message that mattered most came from Yuki Tanaka, my college roommate and business partner. Saw the news. About time you stopped hiding. Proud of you. Dinner next week. I smiled and typed back, definitely. My treat. I'll pick somewhere without a dress code. 3 weeks later, Crystal Lake Country Club reopened with new policies. No more hierarchy of members. No more special treatment for the wealthy or well-connected. Staff were given bonuses and better benefits. The dress code was relaxed. We started scholarship programs for underprivileged kids to access tennis and golf lessons. And Table 7, that corner table where they'd tried to hide the disappointments, became a memorial plaque. Reserved for anyone who's ever been told they don't belong. You belong here. Welcome. My parents never apologized. They told everyone who'd listen that I was vindictive, that I'd deceived them, that their termination was unjust. Some people believed them. Many didn't, especially after the staff complaints became public knowledge. Dylan and I had dinner every month. Rebecca gave birth to a beautiful daughter they named Emma. I became Aunt Sarah, not the disappointing daughter, but the aunt who showed up with thoughtful gifts and terrible dad jokes. And sometimes, late at night in my small apartment that I never bothered moving out of, I thought about that moment when Robert Chin said, "Madam Owner," and my parents' entire world shifted beneath their feet. They'd spent my whole life teaching me that I wasn't enough. That I didn't belong. That people like me served, not dined. They were right about one thing: I did serve. I served as the owner, the employer, the person with actual power. I just served at a much higher level than they'd ever imagined possible. And that, I decided, was enough.